If you're an experienced USCOTS attendee, you know what the closing session consists of. Even if this is your first time in person, you also know what the closing session consists of. It consists of 5-minute talks. We're going to have five-minute talks. Remember what I said on Thursday evening? 5-minute talks are very challenging. They're especially challenging when the task is to reflect upon the conference, which just had its last session end 15 minutes ago. So this was a very unfair assignment we gave these 5 brave folks. But I'm very, very happy that April Kirby-Helm from Winona State, Lisa Kay from Eastern Kentucky, Marion Frazier from the College of Worcester, Marjorie Bond from right here at Penn State, and Michael Sullivan from Joliet Junior College agreed to accept this task that we gave them. So without further ado, let me ask April. You know why April's going first, of course.
Never more in my life have I wished my name did not start with the letter A. That and the fact that the month of April always seems to be the most stressful, worst month of the entire semester. But anyways, I was thinking I was like, communication. And I was like, our students communicate in all these different ways. So I decided to title this, There's More Than Just Analyzing Data, because our students get so excited about all the fancy things they can do, and they learn this new program or this new package, and they get so caught up in the analysis that then it's like, well, now you got to tell me about it. And they're kind of like, what? I just like to play with the fun stuff. So I framed it in terms of different formal and informal ways that students communicate with one another. So the first one is just them communicating with their peers, their fellow classmates, collaborations, teams, anything like that. Or you might have a slightly more formal setting and they're tutoring, because we have lots of majors who are tutor intro stat or intro data science, so it's a little more technical perhaps in the way they need to communicate. And then we have well, you did a project, you need to present it to us in a class or at a conference, so we're ramping up that technical aspect of it, once more. And then sort of the top level is they go out, they get jobs, they get internships, and they have to present to all sorts of people. We've had students come back and they're like, yeah, we had to present our projects to like the CEO of the company. And they need to be prepared to be able to present or communicate their findings in all of these different areas. So what I put together are some things I got from the conference, and Sarah did a very good job at trying to allude to some of the things that I had already written this morning. So one way to foster that collaboration between each other and sort of a more informal would be those group projects or group work that we do in the class. They get to collaborate, they get to try to communicate with each other, tell each other what types of things that they did. One way we do this a lot at Winona State is we encourage our students to do like data analysis team competitions, and so then they have to take their work and present it to others. And then there's the consultant client, so that's some of that more technical, but yet you still have to explain it so someone who has no idea what statistics is or the analysis you just told them you did, they can understand what you're telling them, that their data is answering their question or whether it's not. Then a lot of us have capstone projects or independent research that we do with our students, and most of them will have to write up a report, so there it's more technical writing, but they usually have to present it somewhere as a poster presentation, as a seminar to the department. Maybe they come to USCOTS or different conferences to then tell people what they did, right? We like to tell our students, you've been versed in this for 5 months, but you need to be able to explain what you did to somebody in like 2 minutes, because that's all you're probably going to get attention-wise from them, and they have to see what your passion was for the project that you did. And in terms of online learning, discussion boards were talked a lot about, and how we can use discussion boards to facilitate communication between individuals and how they can help each other to learn together. And so that's really a way in the online learning world we can work on communicating what the data is telling us. And then there was a lot of talk about revisions and resubmissions. And some people said, yeah, I make students write a reflection. They have to revise it, but then they have to tell me where they went wrong, or how they went wrong, or how they figured out how to get to that next step. And so that's a way for them to assess their own understanding and then try to convey it to someone else, the instructor, or even their friends. And then peer feedback, right? If you write something and you give it to your peer, they should be able to understand what you're talking about. So is it accessible to everyone? We have them, do talks or write posters or things like that. And they get to get feedback from their peers as whether it was understandable, and it's a different perspective from the instructor. And so a lot of students, you're thinking all of these things, and students are like, really? Are you going to make me do this over and over and over again? But in reality, it's that practice that's going to help them become better communicators so that then they'll be successful at whatever they do after your class.
Thanks, April. Come on up, Lisa.
Start my timer here. Okay. So I don't know about the rest of you, but since Tina Turner passed away, I've had her voice in my head ever since then. So I'm going to try to hit the highlights of the conferences. I saw them with some references to Tina Turner music. So, data. What's communication got to do with it? All right, so what you get is what you see. We saw a lot of visualization for the last couple days. Joe Harden talked about visualization and how we can use it for art and inspiration. I attended a session where Silas Bergen talked about how we can use Gestalt principles to make better visualizations and teach our students to make better visualizations. Beth Chance and Emily Robinson talked about how we can use visuals in our teaching. And I snagged a comment that I really liked from an audience member. Start with art. All right, we don't need another hero. We all know that active learning and student engagement work better than lecture. Today, Kelly Spoon gave us a lot of ideas about how we can make our classrooms more active. Sarah Stout talked about how we can teach students to read actively by using things like annotation. Megan Mako talked about how she used guided peer reviews. Larry Lesser encouraged us to be a facilitator and co-learner and to make our instruction interactive and generate engagement. All right, let's stay together. We've heard a lot about collaboration. Some of you may not know that George Cobb spent a semester at Eastern Kentucky University in spring of 2011 as our Wilson Endowed Chair. So I felt like I had to find a good George Cobb quote. And he said, "Statistics at its best is a collaborative undertaking." Jamie Parrott in the opening session talked about the power of collaboration. And I really liked the phrase that Aaron Blankenship used in saying that when we communicate with others, we should assume grace and good intentions. And then I know there were also some sessions here about collaborative keys. Of course, I could have included that on the previous slide as well, making our instruction interactive. Okay, so yesterday I attended the Birds of the Feather session on artificial intelligence. And we talked a lot about ChatGPT, of course. By the way, it did not create this presentation. So I came away from it thinking, okay, we're going to have to address this. I know I'm going to have to deal with it at some point, but it'll be okay. It doesn't sound all that scary. And then I checked my email, and I had this news alert. I was a teenager in the 80s. So when I read that computers are about to take over the world, this is what I think of. Yeah, that takes holy shitness to a whole other level, folks. Last year, Chris Franklin gave a great presentation for Bu Sigma Rho on humanizing statistical information. And I've seen a lot of that in this conference. Regina Nuzzo talked about embodied quantification, and I loved how she also humanized her presentation by telling her story. Social justice issues could go various places and, of course, could have its own slide, but that's one way, of course, to humanize statistics. Larry also talked about telling a story, using edutainment to humanize our instruction. And John Baylor talked about using statistics as plot elements. So one way that I've humanized statistics in my classes is to tell students a little bit about statistical content that relate to my daughter. My youngest daughter has a neuromuscular disease called spinal muscular atrophy. She has given me permission to share this with you. And so sometimes I'll use that to talk about clinical trials or probability related to genetics and that sort of thing. I could talk, obviously, for a lot longer about that, but I will just briefly say that I have used that a little bit in my classes. And since this is about communication, I will tell you that my daughter had to have a tracheostomy in the spring. And so we avoided it for over 20 years. So she has done great. She is an amazing human being. But I wanted to share just a little bit of inspiration with you here. Actually, I think if I hit enter, it'll play. She's having to relearn to talk. Oh, the sound isn't coming through. Oh, well, that's okay. Anyway, this is really a big thing for her, and I just wanted to share my girl with you. All right, so overall impression of USCOTS, you know what's coming, don't you? Can you guess? Simply the best. And there are my cats. You got to see the cats. References. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Sorry about the sound there. It was really close between Marion and Marjorie. We had to go to the fourth decimal place.
Did come up. That's exciting. Okay, so I am so happy to be seeing you all in person for the first time in 4 years. Like Larry, this is my first in-person conference since before the pandemic, and you can ask my husband. For weeks I've been giddy about the thought of seeing you all and interacting and learning and making new friends and having some time away from my two small children. So obviously Kelly and Alan have asked us to talk about takeaways. So I want to talk about community. So specifically our community, this community, right? And in order to do this, we've heard a lot about stories and telling stories this weekend. And so in order to do this, I want to tell you about story about my history as part of this community. So my journey as part of the statistics community and the statistics education community started with this man, Brad Hartlaub, who was my undergraduate mentor. And Brad taught me many things. I had 8 classes with him over 3 years. So if you do the math on that, so he taught me many things, many content things, but he also taught me passion and motivation and caring. And I used to say that Brad taught me everything I know, but of course that's not true, because I graduated and I went to grad school, and then I met these two people. So Bill Knotts was my dissertation advisor, Jack Miller was my teaching mentor. And of course, like Brad, they modeled great teaching. They also supported and motivated me through the dark, horrible days of graduate school. And just look at these two happy people radiating joy and warmth, right? That is what Bill and Jack did for me and continue to do in many ways. So I graduated from Ohio State, and I got my first tenure-track job at Gustavus Adolphus College in Minnesota. And my senior statistician at the time at Gustavus was Carolyn Dobler, now retired, who was a great mentor. But of course, joining what I did not realize when I took the job was that I was joining the Minnesota statistics education community, right, which is this like amazing hotbed of ridiculously awesome educators. One of whom, right, pictured here on the right. So I still remember my first JSM after being hired at Gustavus. I was at some sort of a event or, I don't know, there may have been food or drinks, I don't recall exactly. And I think Paul Roback literally just like saw my name badge and came over and was like, "Hi, I'm Paul. I teach at St. Olaf. Let's be friends." And also, I want to point out, this is actually Paul's official picture on the St. Olaf website. And I did, all these are these people's official pictures. I just love this. This is like his official picture. Anyway, so many people in the statistics community, right, are just like, "Hi, I'm Paul. Let's be friends," right? Like that Paul's such a great example of that, that generosity of spirit, right, and that kindness. I got many resources from Paul in those first couple of years, but I got many resources also and continue to get many resources and help, advice, support from the Isolated Statisticians list, run, of course, by Jeff Whitmer at Oberlin. And I want to thank Jeff for that resource that he provides, and for all of you and the people who aren't in this room as well, who are part of the Isolated Statisticians community, especially if you're new to this community and you consider yourself an isolated statistician, or even maybe just like in your heart an isolated statistician. Please email Jeff, sorry Jeff, please email Jeff and ask him to get on the ISOStat list, because it's an amazing way to make these connections, but to also, as I said, get advice, ask questions, right, be part of the community. So as the years have gone by, I realize I've gotten into more of a place where, or I've gotten to a place now where I feel like I'm giving as much as I'm taking, which is nice. And one thing I love about this community is a willingness to share, a willingness to rely on each other, respect for each other's opinions and ideas and differences of opinion. A willingness to just like try something crazy and then tell us about it at a conference like this in a public forum. "I tried this thing, it was a disaster. Go for it," right? Learn from my mistakes, right? We want to find new people to work with. 4 years ago, right here, I went to a breakout session done by the guys at CMU about the integrated statistics learning environment. Philip Burkhart was one of those people. Literally just walked up to him afterwards and was like, "Hi, I'm Marion, let's be friends. I'm interested in ISLE, can we work together?" It's been 4 years, we're still working together on the ISLE project. So I have come to realize in the last couple of years that I am older than Brad and Jack were when they were mentoring me in my early 20s. So in the last year, I've joined the ASA Sections mentoring program. This is me with my mentee, Eric Friedlander, who just left about an hour ago. And so I encourage you to join that program, either as a mentor or a mentee, if you feel so inclined, to try to support the next generation of statistics educators. I have learned things and found support from Eric as well, right? It's a two-way street. So what's the point of all this, right? Am I just a narcissist and wanted to talk about myself for 5 minutes? The answer is yes. But also, right, Larry talked about coming together and relying on all of our expertise. John Baylor asked for feedback from this community of educators, right? Maxine said, "I couldn't have done it without those who came before me. We stand on the shoulders of giants," right? Sarah said, "Reach out to me. I'm happy to be your cheerleader," right? So look around you, right? In this room, we have so many Paul Robacks, so many Brad Hartloffs and Jack Millers, right? A room full of passion and creativity and support and encouragement and warmth, right? A room full of colleagues and friends and not yet friends. A stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. That's what my 8-year-old says. So continue to reach out to this community. Newbies, make yourself part of this community. I am so thankful for all of you. Stay in touch. I'll see you in 2 years.
Thanks very much, Marion. Marjorie's next.
Well, it is great to be here at USCOTS, and that is how I say it. And it is my 10th USCOTS. There's a few of us here. And since we're thanking people, I particularly want to thank Dennis Pearl, who has been the director of CAUSE for all these years. I have to say that this conference has made a huge difference in my career as a statistics educator. It's affected all my students, and so thank you, Dennis, for all that you've done. So let's see, what are some of the things we've been doing since Wednesday? Or if you're like me, you were here on Tuesday working with your research colleagues, or maybe you were here on Wednesday to do a seminar. So there was lots of conversations. We sat, we learned about stuff, and we've put the puzzle pieces, maybe some of them together, maybe not. So what have we done? Well, we've talked about gaze and realized that maybe we're going to revise it again. We have learned about different ways to teach than a traditional framework. We figured out how to CODAP, which is Common Online Data Analysis Platform, and we can also do data science by design, which isn't in here, or do the aisle, and we hope that we're in step with invigorating statistics and data science teaching through professional learning, and maybe I can become a Jedi with justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion if my politicians let me do that. But maybe if I edutainment them, they won't notice that I'm a Jedi. But I can dazzle them with the data and the story library. Perhaps I could even score with sports contents for outreach, research, and education if I'm agile and I use Scrum practices. And I can do it with esteem, which means I'm going to enhance statistics teacher education with e-modules. Maybe I should use Shiny, or maybe our Markdown, but then there's Quattro. And as I teach the students to communicate with data and about data, am I going to be using R or Python? Or maybe I'm going to be able to jump if I'm sassy enough, or just be mini with Minitab. Oh my, whoops, gotta go back. That's not good. There we go. So if we look at all of this, I start to think maybe I have a little bit of information overload. And so what do I do? Maybe I should just go to the dark side and be an admin person. And we're going to see the next slide that has the headline that was supposed to pop in last, but we'll just go with it because I've made a mistake. But if you want to know a news headline, nearly 4,000 jobs were lost due to AI. So what can you do as you feel a little bit overwhelmed? Well, you can be you and realize that means that maybe you don't sing, dance, or are that funny, but be you in your classes. As you're trying to take everything that you've learned, just be yourself and do what you can in what you've learned. Pick a few things to change, and whenever possible, collaborate, collaborate, and collaborate. And with that, thank you.
Thanks, Marjorie. Michael Sullivan is next. Michael doesn't have slides for us, so I'm going to go back to the closing session side and put that up. Give me a moment. Michael.
Trying to figure out what the chances of a Michael being last out of 5 names. First, I want to thank Alan and Kelly for putting together another wonderful conference. I mean, I think this is the best conference ever, let alone STAT conference. I always come away from this learning so much. I want to thank all the presenters who put a lot of work into the content that we were able to learn, and I'm going to take back to Illinois and Florida so many wonderful things. So here's what I learned. Communication is about sharing ideas. The keynotes and breakout sessions all had great items that we can use to be effective communicators. The sessions also let us know that communication is so much more than conveying information in words or text. Communication is about listening. Ask students questions and listen to the response. Look at your students' body language and other nonverbal feedback. Read their faces. Are your students engaged? If not, think about ways to involve them in the learning process. This conference had many presentations on flipping the classroom and active learning. Clearly, folks are getting away from being the sage on the stage and are looking to be more the guide on the side. They're becoming facilitators of learning. Why is this a popular approach? So a study was done in a chemistry classroom where students were given clickers and asked to click whenever they found themselves daydreaming, going to visit Pluto and then trying to come back. The average time that it took for a student to click was 5 minutes, 5 minutes into your lecture. And towards the end of the lecture, it was up to every 2 minutes. So you can only imagine visiting Pluto, how the re-entry is going to be in something like a stats class. Communicate to your students about your own personal struggles with learning. I think all of our students think we came out of the womb developing multiple regression models. So the story that I like to tell is I was taking an econometrics course, and I got so frustrated with that line that are in these advanced books, it should be obvious that. And then I threw the book and obviously got incredibly frustrated. But I went back. I grabbed the book out of the drywall and went back to studying. So I think our students need to hear about our struggles and about the power of productive persistence. They need to hear the value of failure and the power of yet. In the words of C.S. Lewis, failures are fingerposts on the road to achievement. Learning is difficult. Learning never ends. The purpose of higher education is to train students how to learn and instill the desire to learn more. Have students communicate with each other. Develop or borrow activities that facilitate this process. There are plenty of opportunities to use material presented at this conference, such as the collaborative keys. Anything that promotes peer-to-peer instruction is a valuable tool in helping students communicate about data and learn from each other. Besides communicating with our students, I also believe that we need to communicate with our colleagues, especially those who do not attend conferences such as USCOTS, and those whose primary area of expertise is something other than statistics. Communicate with them about the exciting things that you learned at this conference. Communicate with them about the evolution of introductory statistics. I can't believe this, but I first started teaching intro stats in 1992, and I don't remotely recognize the course that I taught back then. The ability to bring relevant and exciting data into the classroom, the ability to work with large data frames and use these data to teach statistical techniques, the ability to play with statistical applets to develop statistical concepts, the ability to use modern techniques of inference such as bootstrapping, simulation, and randomization methods is powerful and engaging. These wonderful resources and pedagogical tools are not being utilized by all of our colleagues. share the message of the p-value is less than 0.05. We need to communicate with our colleagues about modernizing their intro stat courses. Put down the calculator, shred the tables. We need to work to reduce the variability of outcome within the introductory statistics course. Students who enroll at a community college should have similar exposure to the methods of introductory statistics as those enrolling in our highly selective universities. When your students watch the news, view a Twitter post, or read the newspaper, ask them to consume the content with a critical mind. Ask students to find the data that supports any position. Opinions should be formed with the help of supporting data. And I just want to leave you with a parable. There was once a person who had a fig tree planted in his orchard, and when he came in search of fruit on it but found none, he said to the gardener, "For 3 years now I have come in search of fruit on this fig tree but have found none, so cut it down. Why should it exhaust the soil?" The gardener said to him in reply, "Sir, leave it for this year also. I shall cultivate the ground around it and fertilize it. It may bear fruit in the future." So we may feel like our fig trees are not always bearing any fruit, but the fruit may come in the future after your students leave your classroom. Continue to cultivate your soil, and your efforts will bear fruit.
Okay, let's get one more round of applause for all of our closing speakers. And before I wrap it up, I'm actually going to hand the mic over to Megan to talk about ECOTS.
Hey everyone, you ready for another conference? The good news is we have a year to rest and sleep and maybe lose some of the weight from the food, or not. We can keep it, you know. So before I release the information, I want to know, what's the code word? Yay, yes. I realized sitting in the back that I couldn't put this up on the screen without you seeing the picture. So, all right, so here we go. Cats and dogs and fish even can come to USCOTS. So what you need to know about USCOTS is you've already been there. You've been to your home or your office, and you've been online. But something extra special about it is you can also bring your colleagues easily. You don't have to say, oh, you have to have a travel budget and all of that. So if you have a friend who's like, well, I can't travel for various reasons, reach out to them. Bring them next time. You can even wear your slippers if you want. It has the same food as your own fridge. However, with the same great content, great discussion, and wonderful colleagues. So what is the theme? What's next? Moving forward. So May 28th to May 31st, with workshops to follow. And here's some ideas I want you to think about. I'm thinking about, we're moving our profession forward. We're bringing everyone with us, our colleagues, our students. How do we do that? When you move offices or move houses or move apartments, you pick up every item and you look at it and you go, do I need this? Do I need it in the way that it is? Does it need to be smaller or bigger? And what is my history with it? Why do I have this? So as you're thinking about the next year, think about all of those topics, skills, techniques. Do we bring it with us? Do we change it? or do we leave it behind? But how do we make sure that everybody comes with us? See you next year.